Hey there everyone, this is Snoo. Welcome back. I'm back from my major vacation. This is exactly what you think it is. We're going to be looking at the summary of all the Crimson Temple maps in this 1000 map set. Oops, I mean 600 map set. Talk about why it's only 600, but this is a major summary video, so you don't have to go back and look at all the various different 100 map sets and find the timestamps for the results. Look exactly what you want. Just a nice, clear cut, fairly short video summarizing everything, all my findings. So let's get into it. 1,000 maps was my intention. I did it in Sentinel League, then I did it in Sanctum League. And now I've done it in Ancestor League, except I didn't follow through with 1,000 maps. And there were a few reasons for that. The biggest reason is because I found an opportunity to, on short notice, to take a major vacation back to my home country. And I think you'll probably forgive me for that. I realized that the only way I was going to finish this is kind of lose my mind and just go crazy on the crunch time, just try to squeeze it all out. And or lose time on the back end setting up for the next league, which is kind of where we're at now. We're going to be start doing that very soon. So I wanted to, keep my sanity. So I decided to cut it off at 600, which means the sample size is not as good as it could be, to be fair. But we'll talk about what I did find, and it should be particularly interesting this time around because unlike in Sentinel League, when it was a very, very fast-paced, I believe it was like a shrine juicing Harbinger's non-wandering path enraged strongbox strat, like 3 or 4 minutes per map, polished Scarabs. And it's not like Sanctum League, which was kind of a level up from that, gilded Scarabs. Still with Harbinger and enraged strongbox, not quite as fast, but trying to be a little bit more methodical with the, the altar farming and everything. This time, just went completely off the deep end. Wandering Path, Enraged Strongbox, also putting Legions, Rituals, and one other thing. Oh yeah, Expeditions on the map. Randomly spawning those and using Ghosts as well with the new ghosting mechanic. And seeing what would become of that if I was super methodical, spending a little bit extra time on the maps, 6 to 7 minutes per map. Still with a crazy high tier character, was able to kill very quickly. But yeah, kind of going through that and doing what I felt like was maybe the highest end, the most investment, the most efficient, maybe, way of farming. Certainly if you're trying to invest a ton of currency in each map, and it was about 2.6 divine orbs per map, invest in each one of these. With the other two aforementioned 1,000 Crimson Temple map sets, those were well under 1 divine invested per map. So this is probably at least 3 times the investment per map. Did I make currency? So real quick out of the way, yeah, I made some currency. It says here, the following data was collected running a ghosting plus strongbox focus strategy on high-end solo magnifying character, 90% increased item quantity on the gear, 449% increased item rarity. That includes the Janus mod on the helmet. Profit margins were around 28 divine orbs per map. That is, however, counting 1 Mirror of Calandra, which did in fact drop from a ghosted monster. Was able to confirm that in the highlights. Without that Mirror of Calandra, it was around a third of the profits, around 19 divine orbs per map. So yeah, 1 mirror and 600 maps boost the profits by like 50%. It's pretty crazy. It was mirrors were like 600 divines at the time. So let's get into all of the map sets. We're going to start with perhaps the most important one, the Apothecary drop rates, or Divination cards in general. The Apothecary just off to an awful start here with only 1. That is abysmally bad drop rates, because of course I was testing this strategy with gambler drop rate cards, kind of spitballing 600 gamblers to 1 apothecary. That's based on previous stack deck drop rate things that we've seen from the other discords. But I was anticipating at least 4 apothecaries per 100 maps. I only got 1, okay? And then on the remaining ones, it was much more average, I guess, with 4, 3, 4, 3, 3. I never actually got lucky on that, which may sound kind of insane to you. What do you mean you didn't get lucky? You got 4 apothecaries and 100 maps. That's 1 every 25 maps, right? I was supposed to get even more than that. Apparently, according to, all the data that I've been able to collect over time, as well as some help from other content creators. Going to give a big shout out here to Fubgun, which many of you who watch my content know him. He went so far above and beyond what I did this league in terms of no lifing Crimson Temple maps, not with ghosting and not with super high investment stuff, but at least in terms of seeing sample sizes that could really help kind of determine just how true the drop rate of the apothecary is. At one point, he found 100 apothecaries this past league, and he registered 699 7 years bad luck. He wasn't tracking gamblers or anything. But hey, with a sample size that big, that actually counts. So you haven't used a gambler card to kind of figure out just about how many apothecaries I should be getting. If you do 6,000, 7,000 maps, well then you can actually use the 7 years bad luck to really determine how many apothecaries you should get. So I was a little bit surprised to see, based on his data, that apothecary to 7 years rates around 7 to 1. We have pretty good data on the 7 years to gambler drop rate, which I think put me somewhere around 580 gamblers per apothecary in the end. But anyway, as you can see, I found a lot of 7 years bad luck. And if you do the math on that, you're going to see that, well, you already can tell that 29 divided by 3 is a lot more than 7. A lot more than 7. It's almost 10, which is all the evidence I need to know that I got actually incredibly unlucky on the apothecary drop rates. And by the way, that's with 2 duped apothecaries. In this whole list of 18, 2 of them were duped, which that's lucky. But the total count dropped was really bad. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just letting you know that it was very underwhelming. So target farming apothecaries more than anything, very underwhelming. Still made currency. That's nice. But anyway, let's move on. 7 years for my drops may have been a little bit high, but with this number, 174 7 years bad luck, it's not going to be crazy beyond the margin of error. But one reason I do think it was a little bit high is because the Enlightened card, less than 7 years. So that's not supposed to happen. The Enlightened card is more common than 7 years, but I only dropped 170 of them. It's not much more common, but it's something like 10% more common, maybe 10-15% more common. So that's kind of interesting. 28 Enlightens per 100 map average. Then we got the Dragonheart. So I don't really care that much about Dragonheart or Life Thief, but I was tracked this last time, so figured I'd track it. And you can see there, looking at 4 or 5 times. I guess 4 times is well, I think it's supposed to be about 3 to 4 times more common than the Apothecary. And the Life Thief is almost as common as 7 years. So yeah, every time I get a Life Thief, I know I didn't make as much currency as the 7 years would have been. But anyway, that concludes all the Divination cards. As far as Divine Orbs, this was interesting because while I had some Divine Orb altars previously, this league, I got pretty lucky on Divine Orb altars. Actually, I got 0 here, and you can see all the way on the right-hand side I have tier 0 altars. It's an Exalt and a Veiled altar. No Divine Orb altars here. So I averaged 34 Divine Orbs per 100 map set. That's 1 Divine Orb every 3 maps. Like, almost exactly. So I was surprised to see the drop rate that high, and it was fairly consistent with Exalted Orb. Remember, not running Harbinger on this farm. But yeah, with no Divine Orb altars, some of that was currency conversions, but not much. Honestly, maybe only about 10% of the Divine Orb drops in total were from currency conversions. That's the old Arch Nemesis mechanic that carried over and converts your items, unique items, into currency, or Winged Scarabs, in which case we're talking about column number 2 here. So I wasn't originally tracking Winged Scarab, but when I got that unbelievable 42 Winged Scarab drop, I decided, well, I think I'll just go ahead and track Winged Scarab. 20 Winged Scarabs per 100 map. I did see a lot of Winged Scarab conversions. They do seem to be the most, how should I say, reliable extra currency for throwing a Winged Reliquary Scarab onto the map, getting those big conversions, sometimes getting Divine Orb, but often getting a lot of Gilded and or a few Winged Scarabs off of some of the rare monsters, Legion monsters especially. Still, Legion appears to be the best source. Just tremendous. The innate quantity and rarity of a Legion monster, those lieutenants and sergeants, for whatever reason, they're just like higher than everything else, with the exception of an expedition monster potentially. But yeah, so I had a bad one here and the third set, but pretty consistently 10 to 15, and then major outlier on the front end. So I feel like maybe 15 wing Scarab per 100 maps on average. Reliquary keys. Probably doesn't matter a whole lot. It fluctuates depending on when they issue new keys, apparently. But at any rate, I got almost 4 reliquary keys per 100 maps. So they're a lot like Divine Orbs in terms of just pure quantity affecting the drops there. Now, here's a category I somewhat regrettably didn't track very well for the sake of this video because I was more concerned about being efficient. I took off many of the tier 0 drops. So as of, I think it was 2 leagues ago, there are a whole bunch of new tier 0s that were introduced into the league. There were kind of upgraded versions of previous relatively garbage uniques that nobody uses anymore. Let's take, for example, I don't know, Voltaxic Rift received a major overhaul and is now a tier 0 unique. It's not on my loot filter. Same can be said with Lionized Glare. Okay, same can be said with even unique like Divinarius, because I don't want to cross-check it with other uniques that share the same base type, right? That are extraordinarily common. It means I have to spend a whole bunch of extra time scrolling over loot that I'd rather not do it. For the sake of this test, it would have been nice if I had done it. But suffice to say, around half of the tier 0 uniques were off of my loot filter. So this is maybe a 50% representation of how many tier 0s I would have gotten on average. And I gotta say, woefully disappointed. I would have expected to see in 1,000 maps, I would expect to see it, I don't know, an average of at least one of every tier 0 unique, probably. And I think I'm being pretty conservative in that estimate. I've already found a Mageblood this league, doing a strat similar to this before this full test run. Did not find Headhunter, found 3 Calandra's touches this league, found 4 Siege Axes. I found a whole bunch of Maruhi Erki. I think 5 of them this league. 2 of them were found in this set. So I only found 2 tier 0 uniques that were even on my loot filter. The only reason Maruhi Erki is on my loot filter is because it doesn't share a base type with some other one, so I can at least see it. So that's the story there. Would have liked to have found, would have expected to find probably a Mageblood Headhunter or Calandra's Touch in 600 maps. Didn't find it. I did, however, find a Mirror of Calandra, which is not really included in the test runs except for the currency per hour, which, I like to track that stuff. But anyway, where we talked about that, made about 19 divines per hour without the Mirror of Calandra and about 28 with it. The only category left is the tier 0 altars. I already kind of talked about this. Exalted Orb, Veiled Orb, and Divine Orb altars. Divine Orb altars were not represented at all. So I found this to be fairly interesting. One of the more interesting finds of the test was just how many raw Divine Orbs are dropping. Way more than I saw in the other previous 1,000 Crimson Temple maps. And I don't think it's because they buffed Divine Orbs. I just think it's because ghosting especially, and we kind of already know this, but seeing it firsthand, just how much impact ghosting gives on especially the raw quantity of drops. Pretty crazy. I did not focus on ghosting strongbox monsters. People ask me this all the time, so I figure at the tail end of this video, we'll go ahead and squeeze this little point in. The reason for that is because I was running Delirium Mirrors in the map. I would go and ghost everything up, try not to really kill anything, come back and trigger the Delirium Mirror. It is a fairly known knowledge in the high-end Magic Find community that Delirium does increase the quantity and rarity of monsters in the map, but only, or at least, at the very least, monsters that spawned in the map. So not League mechanics, but just the innate monsters that spawn in the map. They receive a boost to quantity and rarity when they're under the effects of Delirium, which varies depending on how deep in the Delirium Mirror you are. It's a whole bunch of math that I kind of, can't just do a calculation off the top of my head. It's somewhere around maybe 20-30% more loot. Put it like that. Somewhere around there is my estimation. So that gets synergized or multiplies with the ghosting mechanic, because the monsters have quantity and rarity. Delirium has quantity and rarity. Strongbox has quantity and rarity, but it's also put on the monsters, so it's additive with that, so no major bonus. But anyway, just trying to multiply as much as I can on the maps. Again, it was very methodical for this test run, but I figured out how to do it. It took a lot of practice, but I got pretty good at it. And I don't know if it's going to stay in for the next league, the whole ghosting thing, but that was basically the major theme of this 1000 Crimson Temple maps test, was to see what happened if we pushed it to its absolute limit, went as methodical as possible, try to get as efficient as possible, try hard as possible, all winged scarabs, all elevated sextants. And yeah, we'll see what happened. I have no regrets. I felt like this may have been, at least on paper, the most lucrative way to run maps this league. At least if you had a strong magnifying character. But, you know, there were some other things you could do, like Sanctum, for example, was maybe actually technically more lucrative on average. I don't know. But anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on this set. Again, I apologize for not finishing out 1,000. I don't like failing to commit or failing to follow through with whatever I commit to do. Is just, you know, things, real life is what it is. So we're going to move on to next league, where my focus in the beginning is going to be tailored more around getting a whole bunch of build guides or updates to previous guides out nice and clean. So those of you who have, you know, taken favor with some of my past builds, most notably things like Poison Tornado Shot, will have some good info going into the next league, Affliction League, whatever that is. So don't know what it is yet. Don't have any idea what the patch notes are yet. But that's where we're going to leave it for now. So I'm back, and I'm going to be easing into the early league, you know, practicing runs, starting to stream again. So look forward to that. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.